Israel reveals the remains of an Iranian ballistic missile and once again vows retaliation against Tehran for its recent attack. In the meantime, the U.S. and the EU are going over options to expand sanctions against Iran. Visiting South Korea this week, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, says Washington is looking for options both inside and outside the UN system to continue reporting North Korea's weapons proliferation and sanctions evasion activities. This comes as Russia last month vetoed extending a UN's monitoring of its sanctions on the regime. South Korea's biggest ICT fair kicked off today for 3 days, showcasing the latest AI technology. We take a closer look. It's April 17th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Israel has reiterated its firm response against Iran for its recent attack while showing an Iranian ballistic missile that's been retrieved. How and when it'll respond is still undecided. Iran has fired back. Our Kim Bo-kyung stirs our coverage.
While displaying what was left of an intercepted Iranian ballistic missile, the Israeli military reiterated its will that Iran would not get off scot-free over its missile and drone attacks over the weekend. The massive missile, one of 120 fired by Iran, was retrieved on Sunday morning in the Dead Sea and shown to reporters at Juliet's military base. Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari emphasized that Israel will decide how and when it will respond.
We will respond the way that we will choose, at the time that we will choose. We don't just have defensive capabilities we were proven on Saturday night. We have offensive capabilities, and we will know what to do and when to do and how to do.
This comes amid Tel Aviv's war cabinet having continuous talks about a response to Iran's first ever direct attack. During the latest meeting on Monday, the cabinet reportedly decided to hit back clearly and forcefully, but no other details have been revealed. Though deliberations continue, U.S. officials say Israel's potential retaliation could be restricted in scope against Iranian military forces and Iranian-backed proxies outside of Tehran's territory, given that the international community keeps calling for restraint from Israel. Iranian President Abraham Raisi warned Israel as well, saying the smallest action against Iran's interests would be met with a severe, extensive, and painful response. Such remarks came during a call with his Qatari counterpart on Monday. Iranian president's words echo those of the deputy foreign minister, who told state TV on Monday night that Tehran's response following any Israeli retaliation would come in seconds, not hours.
If for any reason the Zionist regime wants to take even minor action against our land, against the Iranian people, against Iran's interests, it will definitely face a decisive and harsh response. And this answer will not take another 12 or 13 days. Zionists should not count in hours, but in seconds.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In the meantime, the U.S. and the EU are going over options to expand sanctions against Iran in light of its aerial assault on Israel. Shin Se-byuk has the latest.
The U.S. Treasury Department has warned of new economic sanctions against Iran. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made the announcement on Tuesday during a news conference on the sidelines of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank spring meetings in Washington. Yellen emphasized that she, quote, fully expects additional sanctions against Iran to be implemented within the coming days. She also noted that the U.S. has been actively working to curb Iran's oil export capabilities and suggested that further action could be taken in this area. Her remarks came as Iran launched its first ever direct attack against Israel on April 13th, firing some 300 drones and missiles in retaliation for a suspected Israeli airstrike on its embassy compound in Damascus earlier in the month. The European Union is also seeking to expand its sanctions against Iran. On Tuesday, the foreign ministers of the 27 EU member states convened an emergency video conference where several countries agreed on the need for additional sanctions against Iran.
Some member states propose the adoption of expand the restrictive measures against Iran.
The proposed sanctions reportedly include targeting components used in Tehran's weapons manufacturing. The sanction-related developments from the Treasury Department occurred as Israel ramped up diplomatic efforts to advocate for broader sanctions against Iran. Earlier on Tuesday, the Israeli Foreign Ministry revealed via a social media post that it has sent letters to 32 countries urging them to impose sanctions on Iran's missile program. Meanwhile, Washington expressed significant concern over potential military collaboration between North Korea and Iran, particularly in nuclear and ballistic missile development. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller raised such concerns in a briefing on Tuesday in response to a question about suspected cooperation between the two regimes. Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Ryder, in a separate briefing, emphasized that the U.S. is aware of the threats from North Korea and Iran. He highlighted that the U.S. is committed to working closely with its Indo-Pacific allies, including South Korea and Japan, to enhance security and stability in the region. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Amid escalating tensions in the Middle East, on top of the likelihood of the Federal Reserve's delay in announcing a rate cut, the South Korean won has been weakening against the U.S. dollar, with the exchange rate hitting 1386.81 at the close of Wednesday's session. This comes after it surpassed 1,400 won to the dollar at one point during Tuesday's session for the first time in 17 months. The Japanese yen also plunged to a 34-year low against the greenback earlier this week. To cope with this, the finance ministers of South Korea and Japan agreed to take appropriate steps to curb volatility in their foreign exchange markets. This as Seoul's finance minister Choi Sang-mok has met his Japanese counterpart Shunichi Suzuki in Washington after the G20 top financial officials meeting. In other news, President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida are reportedly to hold a phone call on Wednesday evening regarding Kishida's recent state visit to the U.S. That's according to Japanese news outlet Mainichi Shimbun, citing multiple sources familiar with the bilateral relations. The presidential office also said that Japan has reached out for a call. The conversation is likely to be on what was discussed with Biden to ramp up the trilateral cooperation. The three leaders have recently been ramping up security cooperation with the Camp David summit last year. The top U.S. envoy to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, met with reporters this morning in the South Korean capital. She said the U.S. is considering options both in and outside the UN to continue monitoring sanctions evasion activities by North Korea. Our Kim Jong-sil covers what was said.
The career diplomat with over 40 years of experience, the top U.S. envoy to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, met with reporters in Seoul on the last day of her visit. This was the veteran diplomat's first visit to South Korea, but her 4-day trip, which started on Sunday, was packed with appointments including meeting with the president and visiting the demilitarized zone.
The DMZ is one of those places where the past and the present collide, where the lines, literal and metaphorically, that divided the peninsula 70 years ago, not only remained, but unfortunately, I feel more deeply entrenched than ever before. And as I said at the DMZ, that re-entrenchment is owed to the DPRK's lawlessness, both within the country and far beyond it.
The U.S. ambassador also said discussions are taking place to continue the work done by the UN panel of experts set to expire at the end of this month.
That includes charting a path forward following Russia's concerning veto and China's abstention of a UN Security Council resolution that would have renewed the mandate of the 1718 Committee panel of experts.
The panel has been monitoring, investigating, and reporting on sanctions violations by North Korea for the past 14 years.
We discussed options both inside and outside the UN system. In lockstep with our ROK and Japanese partners, because it's critical that all member states continue receiving independent and accurate reporting of the DPRK's ongoing weapons proliferation and sanction evasion activities.
When asked about the potential risk of Russia and China opposing such efforts, the U.S. envoy said this.
I think we will eventually find a mechanism to continue to do that reporting. And yes, Russia and China will continue to try to block those efforts, but that is not going to stop us from finding that path moving forward.
The ambassador stressed that the goal of her visit was to enhance trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan on the Security Council and beyond. She has left for Japan, where she'll stay until Saturday. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
The Korea Inter-parliamentary Exchange Center has opened doors in Washington, D.C. Located 3 kilometers from Capitol Hill, the center aims to facilitate interaction between Korean and American legislatures. Addressing members of the opening ceremony on Monday local time, National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo shared hopes for a productive partnership between lawmakers of the two countries to better address global challenges. South Korea's 2 main political parties are busy preparing for leadership reorganizations ahead of the launch of the National Assembly session on May 30th. Ruling People Power Party floor leader and acting chairman Yoon Jae-ok said on Tuesday that the party was creating an emergency steering committee to prepare for the party convention, which is forecast to take place as early as June. It's expected a new party leader will be chosen there. Meanwhile, the main opposition Democratic Party is planning to elect a new floor leader on May 3rd. DP spokesperson Park Song-jun told reporters earlier today that this was due to the agreed-upon need for speedy preparation for the new assembly. The International Monetary Fund is maintaining its growth forecast for South Korea this year at 2.3%, citing remarkable resilience in major global markets. The latest forecast mirrors that shared in January when the IMF raised its outlook by 0.1 percentage point. The IMF's projection is also rosier than the 2.2% growth forecast by the OECD and 2.1% by the Bank of Korea. The IMF further kept its growth forecast for Korea next year unchanged at 2.3%. U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has further dashed hopes of a loosening in the country's monetary policy ahead of a related meeting in 2 weeks' time as inflation remains high. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has long kept its inflation target at 2%. Reaching the target would mean rate cuts to levels seen before the COVID-19 pandemic. However, speaking at an event in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell hinted that it will take longer than expected to achieve the confidence needed to reach the central bank's inflation target, signaling it will also likely take longer to cut rates.
The recent data have clearly not given us greater confidence and instead indicate that it's likely to take longer than expected to achieve that confidence. That said, we think policy is well positioned to handle the risks that we face. If higher inflation does persist, we can maintain the current level of restriction for as long as needed.
Powell's latest comments are in contrast to remarks made just 2 weeks ago, when he said the overall outlook had not changed much despite some hotter than expected figures at the start of the year, and that central bank officials expect to lower rates at some point this year. His comments also suggest that without further evidence of inflation falling, the U.S. Fed may carry out fewer than the 3 quarter-point reductions forecast during its policy meeting in March. U.S. stocks reacted negatively on the back of Powell's hawkish comments. The S&P 500 dropped below 5,100, shedding 0.21% to end trading on Tuesday at 5,051.41, while the Dow Jones also fell 0.53%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 0.12% from the previous day. Rate cut delays in the U.S. will also mean a more restrictive stance by the Bank of Korea, with South Korea also struggling to bring down its inflation level to the 2% target. 이승재, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, artificial intelligence is changing many aspects of our lives, and South Korea's biggest ICT fair showcased the latest AI technology along with other tech innovations. Our Moon Hae-ryun went there and files this report.
The 16th edition of the World IT Show opened on Tuesday in Seoul with 446 companies from 10 countries in attendance. The central theme at this year's World IT Show is innovation in everyday life created by AI, so let's take a look and see what AI innovations are on display. A range of hardware and software products incorporating AI technology was set up at the booths run by domestic and foreign firms, such as the Galaxy AI integrated in the latest line of smartphones from tech giant Samsung Electronics. The AI functions available on the Galaxy S24 smartphones are largely attributed as the reason behind the firm's return to its leading position in global smartphone sales in the first quarter of the year. While it offers a number of perks that can be used in everyday life, such as a search tool that can be used on images or videos, and a photo editing tool that has a range of functions to help users polish their photos, a feature that's stolen the spotlight is the live interpretation function.
For example, you could use this function to make a reservation at a restaurant overseas through a phone call. It's available as an on-device feature, so you don't need the internet to use it, which makes this very convenient.
And it's not just smartphones that have integrated AI technology to transform your day-to-day experience. LG Electronics have built-in artificial intelligence in household appliances, such as a television that senses the amount of light and sound in its surroundings to adjust its screen brightness and volume accordingly. Washing machines, too, are now smarter.
Our Trom washing machine senses how wet or how dirty an item of clothing is once it's put inside the machine, and adjusts the wash settings accordingly without the user having to do it themselves to make the process easier.
Other companies, such as telecommunications firm SK Telecom, displayed a security camera that identifies people or things and their actions through AI technology, while South Korea's internet company Kakao showcased AI functions integrated into their chatting application KakaoTalk that summarizes texts and edits the tone of messages to fit the situation. With AI becoming more and more advanced, firms are increasingly finding different ways to shape them to fit human needs. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
A Korean research team has developed landing technology for delivery drones to allow for their wider application in daily life. Lee Eun-jin explains.
This is a delivery drone that transports items from Jeju Island to nearby Gapado Island. It quickly delivers food or daily essential products to areas that lack accessibility. The most important factor for such delivery drones is safely avoiding any obstacles and landing at an exact location. With the development of driving technology, these drones can reach their destinations with GPS tracking, but they haven't been able to detect surrounding geographic features. To improve this technology, a team of Korean researchers have developed a new landing technology for these drones by combining two different kinds of sensors. A camera sensor first monitors geographic features. Then its artificial intelligence function checks for obstacles like water or trees or any surface distortion in the shadows. Then, tilt information detected using a radar sensor is combined to determine whether it's safe for the drone to land. The research team set up obstacles for test purposes, and the drone was able to find an empty spot between the obstacles for a safe landing.
We applied the best features of the two kinds of sensors for this research. We've confirmed from testing in various environments that this technology can be used for the safer landing of drones.
The use of this technology means that drones can travel even in environments without prior information, and they can land safely at sites of accidents or disasters. Going forward, the research team also expects to expand its application to drones with a variety of purposes, from delivery to military equipment, and also to other unmanned aerial vehicles. 이은진, Arirang News.
In Taean, Chungcheongnam-do Province, the country's largest annual tulip festival has opened with millions of tulips on display. Our Yoon takes us to the mesmerizing scene.
The 2024 Taean Tulip Festival is another reminder that spring is here. Hosted by the Korea Flower Park every year in Taean, Chungcheongnam-do Province, this is the festival's 13th edition. This year's Taean Tulip Festival runs until May 7th. With 2.6 million colorful tulips, it promises visitors stunning views. The Taean Tulip Festival was awarded the World Tulip Award twice, in 2015 and again in 2017, by the World Tulip Summit Society, recognizing it as one of the top 5 tulip festivals in the world. It is the only tulip festival in South Korea recognized by the international organization, representing major tulip festivals and industries across the globe.
The design concept for this year is peacock, emphasizing the three-dimensional aspect of a peacock's tail feathers. We made the use of the different varieties, colors and sizes of tulips to maximize the visual impact.
Standing on the observatory, visitors can see the tulips planted in the shape of a peacock. One notable feature of the Taean Tulip Festival is the strategic planting of both early blooming and late blooming tulip varieties. Visitors can enjoy the full spectrum of tulips blossom, including the delightful transition of colors. Depending on when you visit during the 4-week-long festival, the peacock's tail could be white, red, or even multicolored.
It's actually absolutely beautiful display, and how they've poised the flowers for taller ones to be more prominent and the smaller ones to do in-depth, almost like a 3D effect of the imagery is really beautiful.
People are finding joy in the sculptures adorned with flowers and the colorful tulips spread across the festival grounds.
Despite the cloudy weather, being here with my mom among the blooming flowers with this wonderful scent, it feels good.
However, all visitors are gently reminded to be careful to ensure that everyone can fully enjoy the beautiful scenery.
There seems to be a trend among the younger generations of taking photos in a particular style, which sometimes can harm the flowers. Since many people are expected to visit, it would be appreciated if we could refrain from entering the flower beds and avoid placing our phones directly on the flowers.
So if you want a blooming good time this spring, the Taean Tulip Festival welcomes you with open arms. 이은희, Arirang News, Taean.
It's another day of yellow dust. Fine dust concentrations are very bad in most parts of the country. Therefore, fine dust warnings are issued throughout the country. The yellow dust will not be resolved tomorrow in the eastern parts of the country, where the concentrations will stay high. If you're outside, make sure to wear a fine dust mask. As the air is stuffy, the weather will continue to be warm. It will be 26 degrees Celsius in Seoul, which is higher than today. The weather will be warm at around 25 degrees in Seoul until Friday, but the daily temperature differences will be wide as well. Tomorrow morning, Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 11 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 25 in Daejeon and Daegu, Gwangju and Gyeongju 24 degrees. On the weekend, temperatures will drop as it rains across the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.